Hey guys, a quick video here on how to keep track of time elapsed in OneTap. So if you're trying to do time tracking, if you've set up checkouts, you're probably looking to keep track of hours as well. For example, there are certain programs, like let's say for example, you have like technical and vocational courses. Maybe you want to keep track of time because that's required for certification. So for example, students have to complete 20 or 30 hours of like training, or they have to go through certain courses in order to basically graduate, or you're keeping track of time for billing purposes maybe. So maybe you have like members and stuff like that, that are coming in, or customers, and you need to just keep track of time to see who's been there how long. You can do that if you turn on checkouts. So let's say for example we create a course, or we create like a list right here called HVAC technician training, and I'm going to say this is like a course that runs, for example, usually Monday through Friday, but for right now I'm just going to make it a single list. I made a whole video that talks about how lists work and how recurring lists work. So let's just say this is like a single instance of a list, and I'm just going to say this is on this is on October the 7th, and I'm going to say, yeah, this allows checkouts. So you want to allow checkouts for time tracking to work, because without checkouts there's no way for us to tell how long each check-in session is. And also another thing to keep in mind in OneTap is that each kind of, like, for example, let's just say you add Anthony into this list, right? And then you do a check-in, then you add Anthony in again. That counts as a second check-in session. Usually if they use a public check-in link, what will happen is that they'll check in and then it'll give them an option to check out. So I'll do an example right here. Start from the beginning. So reset list one, and I'm gonna go right here and I'm gonna type in Anthony and check in, and I'm gonna get an option right after this to basically check out. So if I go through this whole process again, click on it, continue, check out, and then what will happen after that is if they continue to do this whole process again, it will like basically it will say check in again. So it starts a new check in session. So what's going on is that each record on this list now is like a unique session. So like for example, it was like 10 seconds that's that was spent on this session. And by the way, you can manually adjust this as well. So you can be like, hey, this person came in at 4 o'clock, right? And they left at 4:19, right? And then you can be like, hey, this new check-in session started at 4, maybe like 4:20, and then like it's gonna end a little bit later. So each one is a different session, so like the time will like add up. It'll say like 19 minutes 8 seconds, and then we'll keep adding it up. So this adds up across different lists as well whenever you're running reports and when you're looking at this data. So for example, when you go over to the profiles tab and you click on Anthony, you're gonna see the aggregate of like the total time that was spent. If you click on the attendance button, you're gonna see like how many times Anthony's checked in. And also you're going to see like the average time per check-in, and you can always click on each one of these records and you can inspect it. So you can be like, okay, HVAC, like how much time was spent over here. Was there a checkout as well? So in this case there's a checkout as well, and says 19 minutes. And we can also get this data on reports and stuff. So we're going to dig more into that. And on the iOS app, I'm going to show you how you guys can like look at the attendance like logs and then the attendance history. So I got my iPhone right here on the right hand side, and you can click into a specific profile, for example like Anthony, and the same thing here, view attendance, and then you can look at the whole history right here. It says 19 minutes, etc. And we can tap into that and we can inspect more, such as like the location and then all that type of stuff that was gathered from the check-in. Now what you want to do is in order to adjust times and everything, you can do that right here, and you can keep track of those sessions and how much time was spent. Now there are, like, for example, on the public check-in link, there are plans to like add active time tracking over there. So that's coming out very soon. So for example, when people check in before they check out, it's going to say, hey, by the way, it does tell you right now, for example, if you go over here, it will like when the check-in took place. And then there are plans right here to add more like a timer right here that says, hey, you're checking out, after like it's already been like 10 minutes, it's already been like an hour, it's already been 2 hours, etc. And by the way, people can also click on the attendance history, and they can also see their attendance history. So when they checked in, and then when they were there, and then it also shows them more and more data based on like different filters and stuff like that. Now on the visitor app, we have a little bit more of a like an active time tracker right here as well. So if you open up the visitor app on the iPhone, and then you scan a code, right? So you scan this QR code. I made a whole video about visitor app and then how that works. And we're gonna pick a profile from the list. So we're gonna pick, like, for example, Melissa from this list. So type in the name Melissa, continue, register and check in. See, on this page right here, it's actively doing like a countdown, it actively has a timer right here, or like a stopwatch. And that's like the same thing that's going to be coming on the public check-in links very soon. But for right now, the visitor app is the best place if you really wanted to have like an active like counter. And then people can also do checkouts right here as well, so that makes it like super simple. Also, not to mention, the visitor app remembers who did the check-in and check-out, so that it's faster. They don't have to keep searching for the names. That's a little bit more about the visitor app. And then over here we can always like look at like the difference right here, and then like we can adjust the records, and we can also run reports, so we can figure out like individual, like for example, we can figure out like each check-in session and then how long that person was there. We can look at the totals and all that. So I'm going to dig a little bit more into the reports and talk about where you can find time on these reports. So let's start off with the most basic report, which is the single list report. Just to kind of like adjust this, because these were done in like seconds, I'm just going to go over here and I'm just going to change this to like to be, for example, like 4 p.m. or like 4:10 p.m. And then I'm going to just change that to, and like the checkout is going to be at, oh, actually, by the way, make sure that whenever you're changing stuff, that the check-in date is always before like the checkout date. Yep. So that looks a little bit, yeah, that looks a lot better. So the very first thing that we do is we just do export attendance, and then we download this in Excel. And this is the report that we're going to get. We're just going to go over here. We're going to do auto format column width so we can read this data. A lot of the columns are like unnecessary. You probably don't even need them. Like if you're not using codes, notes, and all that, like all that type of stuff, just go ahead and delete those. And then the checked in is super important to know that if, like if they checked in or not. These right here are like totals and stuff. We'll get rid of those. Favorites, we're not using them. Add and add, we're not using it. So we're just gonna be like looking at check-in date, and we're gonna be looking at checked out or not, and then checkout date. And the rest of it is just like stuff that are covered in like different reports. It just talks about like who did the check-in, like what was IP address, what was the device, what was like the link and all that, as well as other custom fields and notes and everything. We don't really like need that right now because we're just focusing on this. So we're just gonna go ahead and delete these columns, and then we're just gonna keep it simple. So this is pretty much what you need to like work with. And if you do want to parse this data and bring it into like, for example, like time and like separate like date columns and stuff, you can just use ChatGPT for the formula. It's also going to be in our community post where you can just take this date and make it into like Excel date format. Just because it has like time zone in there, it might not. Yeah, it just looks a little bit weird. But yeah, so we want to do, for example, like the time elapsed. So like the time elapsed actually was over here. ELAPSED elapsed. Yeah, there it is. So like the time elapsed in minutes is right here. If you want to make your own column, I'll show you how to do that, and how you can like, for example, make it how you can like basically use this date format to create your own column. So I'm gonna go ahead and do an import. I'm gonna do a insert, put it right here. Sorry, one sec. Yeah, so with like a little bit of formatting with Excel formulas, we're able to just like clean up the columns. We're able to kind of get the check-in date, get rid of like the little time zone offset, and then over here we have the elapsed time in minutes that's given by OneTap. So either you can use that directly, this is like given a number of minutes, and you can find out the hours from that. Or what you can do is you can just kind of like use this formula that I'm gonna put on the community post to reformat it into like a proper date format for Excel, and then figure out how to like do the calculations right inside Excel between the timeout and then the time in. So yeah, that's going to be it for the simple list report. If you want to like look at aggregate time, what you can do is you can go to the export, the export attendance button, and then over here you can click on the profiles report. So this one's pretty cool because you can, for example, have it start at the beginning of the month. So it's going to be month to date. We're just going to do download, and we're going to dig into this report. So the same thing here, you want to just like, if you're not interested in like list specific type attendance, you can just go ahead and delete all this. And then what you can do is, this gives you like, by the way, this gives you like individual lists that they've checked into, or if it's a recurring list and it just has the parent in there and kind of, takes all the data from the child list as well. And also gives you the time elapsed. If you look at the column right here, it says attendance studio attendance, Michelle time elapsed. So that's one of the lists that I have here for a teacher. So it's giving me like the time elapsed inside of that. So I'm just going to get rid of like the list specific stuff. So we're just going to focus on stuff that we need to like look at. So we got like, sorry, one sec. We got all these. And then we got visitor type, attendance, enrolled, source, last seen. Last seen's kind of useful. This was like the last time that they've checked in. And We just do an auto fit column width, and then we get rid of these, and then we get rid of the email addresses, and then the phone numbers, and then the nodes here as well. So what we're like literally just like looking at right now is just going to be the number of check-ins that have taken place for a given profile, and we're also like looking at the checkout that have taken place, and then the time elapsed. So we can see that like for Anthony, I think it was like this is the time elapsed in minutes. It was like 19 and 11. And then there's like some other profiles that I've done other check-ins for. So there's like an aggregate of like the total number of minutes they've spent inside this month, so month to date, and then it's like the last time that we've seen them. And the same as before, you can like format this. You can like kind of get the value out of here from like the formula that I'm about to put in the community post, and then you can also kind of like do filters and stuff. So you can be like, hey, I just want to figure out people that I haven't seen this month at all, or maybe I just haven't seen them like this past week, right? So people that have checked in before, and then I want to figure out how many hours they've attended, etc. And yeah, so you can run this across like for example like an entire semester. And then let's dig into like the last report, which is the list report, and let's look at the time on there. And then we'll dig into the full report, and then we'll come back to that. We'll do full report, and we'll do just inside this month, so month to date. Open that up, and this report is probably one of the most powerful reports because you can build like pivot tables and stuff off that. So just like the same as before, I'm gonna go over here, and this is like the list name, so like the list where people have checked into. So we got like the name, the list where they've checked into. It's gonna like rename that as list, and then this is like the name of the parent course. So like maybe we can just call it course, checked in, checked out. So we got the check-in date, and then check-out date. And then we got all the methods and all that. So what we can do is we can just take this data right here. Let me see if we have an elapsed column. Either way, we can just kind of build that from Excel formulas and stuff. But we'll just go ahead and delete all this, and then we'll just basically work with this. So now you have like an entire kind of like log of records of like, hey, this person checked in, this is the list they checked into, this is the course they were attending, if it's a recurring list, and then you can just like look at this specific field right here, in and out. So you can just like look at the like their timestamp of when they checked in, and then when they've checked out, and then you can build like some sort of a custom function. So if you wanted to, for example, keep track of like only hours, if you want to do rounding and all that, like round up, round down, any sort of like other custom logic. For example, if you wanted to be like, no, I only want to like look at the number of hours that are on this course, you can just definitely apply filters in like Google Sheets, and also in Excel you can apply filters. You can build pivot tables, and you can quickly figure out the number of hours maybe certain students have spent in certain courses. And then you can also easily identify people who aren't meeting the criteria. So you could be like, hey, I just want to like figure out people who have spent more than 20 hours like in the last 4 months, and then all the people who didn't would just be the opposite of that. So you can export that, and then you can just figure out people whose names who are missing. Yeah, so it's pretty powerful what you can do with time tracking inside OneTap, especially for like courses, also for billing and stuff. So if you were like, hey, inside of 1 month you're only allowed to use like 10 hours of, I don't know, like 10 hours of like instructor time, etc. So you can keep track of that, and you can build reports off that.